Hello and welcome to The Road Already Traveled, a podcast where we feature lessons from successful entrepreneurs and the professionals that serve them as they share their inspiring stories and insights. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, I'm Rich Schutte, your host of The Road Already Traveled, where we share lessons from entrepreneurs, like-minded business owners, and the professionals that serve them, providing valuable insight to those listeners that are on the same journey. This episode is brought to you by Avalon, a wealth management firm dedicated to personalized financial, business, and investment planning for entrepreneurs as they make their way in our chaotic world. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? At Avalon, we believe wealth isn't just about numbers. It's about freedom, security, most importantly, living life on your terms. Wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, our team of experts is here to guide your every step of the way. No cookie cutter solutions, just smart, personalized strategies designed for your goals. Using our unique Optimal Entrepreneur Program and an unwavering focus on world-class service, our relationships are built to last generations, helping clients achieve lifelong goals through a thoughtful, consultative approach. Visit avalonwealth.com today to start building the future you deserve. That's AVALAN wealth.com. Today, I'm excited to welcome Kevin Shaw into the room. Good morning, Kevin.
Morning, Rich. How are you?
I'm epically awesome.
That's great.
Can't wait to kind of dive into this. I'm going to read a little bio here so people get a taste of who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of dive into some questions. Kevin counsels businesses in corporate governance, mergers and acquisitions, private placement, equity and debt financing, general business matters, and as outside general counsel. He represents not only regional companies, but also those that are global and national, with their critical transactions appropriately weighing risk, opportunity, and the competitive landscape. Specific areas of practice strength include negotiating and structuring a wide range of agreements, stock and asset purchase, licensing and distribution, manufacturing and supply, master services, software, and shareholder. Kevin also supports clients' joint ventures and incentive compensation plans. He graduated cum laude from the University of San Diego and did his law work at Pepperdine University, where he also graduated cum laude. And Kevin's also on the Pepperdine University Law Review. So it sounds like you stay busy just with that, right?
I used to, and it's UC. I went to UC San Diego. Although I took the LSAT at University of San Diego, I was one of the kids up at UC San Diego in La Jolla. I actually just took the family back there to tour around. So my three boys got to see it, and they were like, "Wow, that's a really big university." And I said, "Yeah, it is. Maybe someday you'll go there." So we'll see.
And that was actually my bad when I said University of San Diego. I've got kids college age, and a lot of their friends are down at. Actually, both of them, but I just had a little brain fart there. Three boys.
3 boys, 9, 11, and 14, and they're all going to have birthdays going from oldest to youngest, so May, June, July. So I'll have a 10, 12, and 15-year-old. So pack your bags, and we'll see what happens.
Busy time. What are the boys up to? Are they playing sports?
We're a big soccer family, so diehard Liverpool fans. Sunday, Liverpool is going to take the title, God willing. So we love to be outdoors, lots of traveling, hiking, biking, surfing, golfing, albeit you've seen me golf, which is not good, but it's still fun. Just doing lots of stuff together, hanging out and being outside. So good stuff.
That's awesome. I've mentioned this in a few other episodes. I really, we're all in very personal businesses, right? We have very, very personal connections with our clients, those that we serve, like-minded people, as we mentioned in the intro to the podcast. And I've been lucky enough to watch Kevin in action, with some of the folks that we referred over to him. And I feel really blessed, honestly, to be able to have you here and share some stories with us. And hopefully we can learn a few things that we should be doing and things we should not.
Great. I appreciate it, Rich.
Why don't we dive into some personal stuff, my friend? This is usually my favorite part of it all, right? Because I get to know the people I already know even a little bit better. But tell me something that most people don't know about you. Maybe a quirk, a strange habit, a hobby. We all know about your soccer.
Yeah. So I thought, that's it's a good question, but I'm pretty much an open book. When people get to know me, I'm very transparent. I'm a straight shooter. So people that are relatively close with me and people that new clients, new colleagues, new friends, they get to know what I like to do pretty quickly. I mean, things that I think would be cool things to point out. I've surfed all over the world. I was on a boat trip with friends in southern Costa Rica, and we had two bull sharks circle us, knock one of us off our boards. Other fun escapades while surfing would be getting chased by a bandito in southern Baja. So those are some fun ones to share that not everyone knows, that are a little bit more nuanced. So my life is, law school brought me to Pepperdine. After I didn't get into the top schools, I decided, geez, I'm going to surf every day. So that's a big part of my life that a lot of people know, but now more people know.
No, that's awesome. You would know the name of this person. It's eluding me right now, but that young woman that lost an arm.
Yep, Bethany Hamilton.
Yeah, Bethany Hamilton. I was just in Hawaii at a conference with Entrepreneurs Organization, and she was one of the featured speakers. And what a story!
She's unbelievable. And I mean, as a surfer, to see what she does, I mean, it's absolutely incredible and awe-inspiring to see that she got back in the water and to see how dedicated and focused she is. It's just an amazing person.
Yeah, and as amazing of a person and surfer as she is, she's an incredible and very inspirational speaker. It was really cool to get to hear her story and her journey. So
nice.
Cool. So getting circled by bull sharks on boards off of Costa Rica is pretty crazy. But could you point to anything else as far as maybe the craziest thing you've ever done?
Yeah. I love being outdoors. I love doing things. I will say, though, that I am more I was never the kid growing up, as a skateboarder who would decide it was a good idea to try to ollie over 12, stairs. I wasn't that kid. I was a little bit more reasoned. But with that said, in 2014, I go down to Baja a lot to surf. And I was with my best friend and his dad. That's been our surf crew for the last 30 years. We were down at our spot. And we got out, and it was a good double overhead swell. We were the only ones out. And from time to time, people on the desert road would drive by, look, move on. And as the day progressed, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, till at one point, the little monument that we would look to on the beach to spot, and it's not monuments, for the record, that monument turned into just about wee big, and we were not joking 500-600 yards out to sea, maybe further.
Holy mackerel.
And it got to about 20 foot, and we were surfing very big waves, and ultimately came in on a wave that, had I not made that wave, it would have been probably bad news. And that was about a day or two before Hurricane Odile hit and destroyed Cabo in 2014. So that was probably the craziest, stupidest thing I did, which was just, I should have gone in earlier, and I didn't.
How was the ride?
Very short, because at that point, the waves, that's a great question. You're bringing back memories. It was a wave where we had never seen the outer reef break. So when the outer reef started feathering out on the horizon, we knew we were in bad, it was a bad spot to be in. So a wave came by, and my best friend looked at me, and my best friend, he surfed all over the North Shore, and he's like, we better go on this one. And it was literally just a drop in and look around, and the whole ocean just collapsed by us. And I remember jumping on my board and bear hugging my board and riding in about 500 yards in white water, and then getting to the shore and looking out, and it was just wave after wave after wave. So in hindsight, very stupid. So stupid's probably a better word than crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy in the moment, right? That's one of the great things, right? We learn our lessons along the way. And so crazy maybe turns into stupid in the rearview mirror. But
it certainly does, because my kids now, they'll ask me about surfing and they'll say, well, why aren't you going to go out in that? And I said, my days of surfing over, 3-foot reef passes on big waves and being out in the middle of nowhere, it just doesn't have that effect anymore. I'm happy if I'm at Zuma Beach on a 2-foot wave on a little board and I'm, getting a wave, or, it's changed. any case.
So surfing for so long, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Woodland Hills, kind of off Valley Circle, Mulholland, up in the hills from El Camino. And I had a nice childhood. I think it was back when the San Fernando Valley was still a pretty decent place. We were kind of on the periphery, Valley Circle and Burbank. I remember, I mean, you're a car racer, but I remember as a kid, people would take their hot rods and they'd start at Burbank and Valley Circle, and they'd go all the way up that road, like a racetrack. And that was before Hidden Hills was built up over there. So it was fun. I mean, where Hidden Hills it used to be wetlands, frankly. Yeah. And we'd go back in there and, catch frogs and snakes and play sports. And it was a great childhood. Getting to ride bikes and go hike. And I look at my kids now, and I'm the father that's telling my kids go outside, and they're good. They're good about it. But, as you can probably see, we were fortunate as kids, and, you didn't go inside until your mom's screaming at you where the lights,
right.
The lights came on. So it was a really good childhood, and growing up back then in Woodland Hills was nice. It was a good childhood.
That's awesome. I want to reflect a little bit back on crazy versus stupid, et cetera. It's like I'm getting excited about jumping into some of the professional stuff that I want to talk to you about, because we as entrepreneurs, right? We sometimes we do stuff that we think is crazy and winds up being stupid, and just simply out of lack of knowledge or understanding of what we're into. So I'm looking forward to that part of it. What'd you want to do when you grew up? Did you always know you wanted to do this, or was it something?
No, that's hilarious. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL for much of my childhood and teenage years. I did the Navy SEAL workouts. Well, I mean, I had the book that my dad gave me, and I did that stuff, and I surfed a lot and swam a lot. And that's really what I wanted to do until I learned a little bit more about it. And I was terrified of drowning, being a surfer and having kind of some of those experiences. And my dad had a friend who was a SEAL, retired SEAL, and he shared some of the training. And I'm not sure how, I can't verify this, but it was basically you're hogtied and thrown into a pool, and we're going to see how close you get. And at some point, people are resuscitated. And that was just something that it didn't resonate well with me, and I just wasn't comfortable with that. That was really a big part of it. And then the other part of it is I met some other SEALs or people that were ex-special forces, and just the way that they described how they go about the day just seemed very challenging and calculated. They would tell me that you'd come into a room, and like right now I have my back to my door, and they would never want to have their back to the door. I would have been set up with this window behind me because I'd come into a room or come into a restaurant, and everything would just be, calculating, where am I going to sit? What's the next action going to be? And I found myself going, geez, that's not really my personality profile. So ultimately I didn't decide on being a lawyer till, much, much later on. So
what drew you there? How'd you make that decision? And then ultimately, once you did and you graduated, how did you get started?
So I met my lovely wife while we were in college, and I was a history major, so you can tell that was going to be a great career path. And my wife, then girlfriend, says, "Kev, what are you going to do?" And I said, "It doesn't matter. I'll manage a boutique hotel because I'm awesome and make a lot of money." And she looks at me and she's like, "That's not how the world works." And I'm like, "Of course it's the way the world works. What are you talking about, Lisa?" And, and then I have an older brother who is a big inspiration. He's a big role in my life, and we're very close. And I saw friends of his graduating university with similar degrees and even more technical degrees. And I saw these poor people, literally, not to say it's a bad gig to start, but you graduate college and you go work at Enterprise Rental Car. And I just said, this doesn't make any sense. Like the whole college thing, like this doesn't make sense. And I know a lot of people are thinking about that these days. And, you know, in any case, my older brother, he said, you should think about law school. It could really bring you to some different places, whether you end up in law or business. So I ended up doing it and going to law school at Pepperdine, as you know, and I had no idea what being a lawyer meant. Nothing. I'd never been in a courtroom. The only time I was in a courtroom as a kid, I would think I was 17, and my grandfather passed away, and he left me some bonds. So I had to go with my dad to Van Nuys Courthouse to, you know, go to a hearing to receive the bonds. But I remember I started off my career downtown at an old, very old white shoe firm. Good firm, but very just conservative, stringent firm. I was doing litigation and corporate work. And the litigation I had no appetite for. So I could tell that I was drawn towards the corporate transactional aspect of the practice. So that's kind of how I started early on. I know that was a lot. So
that's kind of the intent, right? I mean, so
yeah.
I mean, what was that like? You know, because, you know, even though you're an attorney, you know, and in that little box that we all paint attorneys, you know, there's still a certain entrepreneurial aspect of what you had to do, right? You had to go out and build your book, build your name. What was that like? What were the early days like as you built into the role that you're now in as this legitimate expert that is guiding some really serious stuff, transactions, et cetera?
It was so practicing downtown and doing that long-term commute and seeing the litigation aspect, which was really just focused on destroying things. You know, I know that at a very high level with very large corporations, there's a strategic aspect of litigation. It's calculated. And there's a whole art form for that. But for me, what drew me to getting and working with businesses was building something and being around people that had all types of ideas and passions, and seeing visionaries and operators and figuring out, okay, well, how can I help you? So I was fortunate enough it was the end of 2006, and I was still downtown. And, you know, leaving work at 6, whatever it was, a few nights in a row. And it took me 45 minutes to get from 300 South Grand to the freeway. And I said, this just sucks. And a friend of mine at the LA Athletic Club said, geez, you should look into this firm, Nevers Palazzo, Packard, Wildermuth Wynner. That wasn't the name then. That's the current name. So I reached out. I went home and I told my wife, she was a school teacher at the time, no kids. And I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. She said, what do you mean? I said, I'm not. I was really trying to get into litigation. I'm sorry, trying to get away from litigation, trying to get into corporate work, and not working at the downtown firm anymore. So I was lucky, and I reached out to the lawyers at my firm here, and that was kind of the start. I think I deviated on the question, Rich. I apologize, but that's kind of the start of getting into working with entrepreneurs and business folks, was really here at NPW.
I'll bring you back when it's not interesting. Okay, I promise.
You're too good a friend.
You know, I'm telling you, like the greatest thing about, you know, this audience, right, is that we're all about the journey, right? Because we're all in one. And it's fascinating, right, that you're doing litigation and the advice and counsel. And didn't like the litigation. You didn't like it so much, so you wanted to go do really good advice and counsel to keep people from being litigated against, right? Yeah,
that's very true.
And we as entrepreneurs, we never think, right? We don't think that way, right? We're like, oh, I got this great partner, I got this great idea, everything's going to be fine. You know, just kind of like when you were getting ready to graduate college with your history major. It's like, yeah, it's going to work out. I'm great. This is fantastic. And we never think about those blind spots that we don't know. Right. And it's really great to have someone in our corner. We don't recognize the value and importance of having, you know, strong people, especially in areas that we're traditionally afraid of, right? Or think aren't necessary for us. Just like every time someone gets married, they're never going to get divorced. It's kind of the same thing in the business world, right?
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
so, I mean, professionally, I know the kind of impact, that you have with your clients and serving business owners, entrepreneurs. Um, but I really want our listeners to be able to hear about some of the things that you're actually doing. Maybe before we start talking about success and failure stories, I know I read your bio. We talked about all these things that we need that we don't recognize that we need, but maybe you can dive a little bit deeper into some of the things I mentioned on your bio in terms of how important it is for us to be thinking about protecting ourselves those ways.
Well, absolutely. So, my practice primarily focuses on two areas. It's mergers and acquisitions, lots of seller, closely held businesses, sell side representation. So we're representing the entrepreneurs in connection with selling to private equity, selling to strategic, selling to public companies, doing some smaller acquisition work. And then the other aspect of my practice is outside general counsel, which is I'm the guy down the hall. Most of my clients are small to medium sized businesses. That means a lot to different people. I have clients that are mom and pops doing a couple $1 million in revenue. I have clients that are doing hundreds of $1 million of revenue. And some of those people that I report to with those larger clients are the legal counsel at those companies. So things that are on my desk that I find interesting that are helpful is a great example would be one of the deals I'm working on right now. It's going to market and it's going to be a big success for the client. And when you sell your business, one of the most important thing I can do as your counsel is negotiate good terms, legal terms, and make sure that you keep your purchase price. That's really my job as your seller's counsel, is to make sure you understand what you're agreeing to and keeping your purchase price. So in this particular deal that we're negotiating, the guy has a very successful business, and we're actually going to be able to negotiate a deal where, unless the shareholders commit fraud or breach their non-competes, they're not going to have any legacy liability. It's going to be a full non-recourse rep and warranty insurance deal, which means the seller will just make the representations and warranties in the purchase agreement at closing. Those representations and warranties don't survive closing, and they walk away from the deal. So what I tell the people is, make sure you're telling the truth. I don't deal with clients that don't tell the truth. That's like, we got back to the straight shooter thing. Yeah. Life's too short. So that's one of the things with some entrepreneurs, is protecting them from themselves. But getting back to the paper on a deal like this, that's very it's very rewarding when you have a business like this particular client where they're going to be able to have a true success story. Another deal that's on my plate right now, it's an asset transaction. That's around a $40-50 million transaction. And the buyer's a large public company, and the buyer's firm, I'm not going to name any names, doesn't matter, but fill in the blank, big firm. And they gave us what I call as an attorney a vomit factor purchase agreement, where it's 80 pages. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those situations where my job in that scenario is we revised the agreement a month ago. It took, for whatever reason, a long time to get the draft back. And the big firm basically, did one of this. And my job at that point is, okay, clients, you need to be aware of what the potential risks are. You need to understand what you're agreeing to, what your obligations are. But when the rubber hits the road, you want to do the deal. And my job as your lawyer is to make sure you understand what you're agreeing to and get the deal done. So, those are two things. Getting back to another flip side of it with outside general counsel is a childhood friend of mine reached out. He as a side business, he's going to get into some venture. And he brought in a partner, and I said, well, geez, it's a brand new business. Like, I don't know if you're going to make any money. Like, do you really want to spend all this money negotiating the hell out of your operating agreement and your buy-sell terms and this and that. I mean, we can do that, and as you're probably aware with your clients, you've seen that where it makes sense to have that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's lots of scenarios where, unfortunately, just, to be very truthful to the audience, there's scenarios where you negotiate all that stuff and it turns out your partner's an asshole and he's not going to abide by it anyway. And then you're in a fight. So look, it's funny. We started this conversation offline and I was telling you, geez, my answers are going to be short, but now I'm finding that I'm quite loquacious. So I'm going to stop.
So I know better with you personally, and also, in your profession as a whole, right? I knew we weren't going to be short on time today for sure. The one thing I will mention that I noticed in what you're talking about, Kevin, is that, I feel like you sold yourself a little bit short. So, my job is just this. And the reality of it is, and especially like in the example you were giving, with an exit, there are things that are coming at us, right, as owners that are exiting that we never even thought of, right? We're thinking, well, we've got this pot of money and, we're just going to sail off down the sun, till the sunsets, right? And we don't think about all the other moving parts, right? We're not really giving enough thought to tax. We're not really giving enough thought to, how we're going to actually make that money work for us or last for us. We're not thinking about, all these other little details. And I've watched you, so when you put your job making it look like this, the reality of it is, your job is well outside of the screen that I can show. And I've watched you make these connections. I've watched you connect the dots. I've watched you in deals, help guide these people that you're making arguably the most important transaction of their life in those situations, and made the right introductions, put them in front of the right people because of the network that you've built and the contacts that you've created over your career. And I think that that's something that we as entrepreneurs miss, right? We don't think about all the things that are going to be coming up, right, along this path, and all the things we're going to have to be thinking about, as we execute not just the deal, but what it looks like when the dust settles.
No, it's a great point. And, and part of that is people come to me sometimes and you've referred clients over that, they say, when's the best time to get involved with you as a lawyer on a deal? And I say, earlier the better, so we can plan. So to your point, we can talk to the financial advisors. We can talk to your CPAs. We can find out if you've got a management team that's going to hold you over a barrel. There's, do you have customer concentration issues? What are you going to do with the money? How much do you need? So a lot of what I do is similar to what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's the core part of representing people in a legal transaction. But a lot of it is I should have been a psychology major.
Amen to that. Yes. Amen.
I mean, shit. Sorry. With your, I can't even imagine, right now. And historically, you've in your business, having your people that money, right? It's
psychology 101.
Right?
Yeah. No doubt. But at that point alone, right, in terms of like, when should I get an attorney involved? And when you're saying earlier, and this is so true, right? Because not only getting someone like yourself involved well before a transaction takes place, you're able to, as well as the team that you can help these people assemble around them, are able to actually find ways to maximize what they're going to get when they do exit, right? Not to have someone come along with an offer and like, oh my God, I wasn't thinking about selling, but let's go, right? Yeah. When all of a sudden you have that concentrated client and the number they offered you winds up getting cut by, a third, and then not having time to create the tax strategies with CPAs and other advisors, to where what you're keeping is far less than what you could, right? And then having not a single clue as to who you're going to work with. But trust me, right? Everyone comes out of the woodwork as soon as they know that there's going to be a big transaction. And all of a sudden, everybody's your friend. And it becomes much more difficult to actually find the right advice, the right advisors, the right people when it's all just happening like this, right? It's having that time. And again, we're all conditioned. Well, I don't need a lawyer now. I don't want to pay that hourly, but that hourly is going to pay for itself multiple times exponentially over, right, what that bill was in terms of not only what you're going to get, but what you're going to keep.
Same thing with your business, right? I've got clients. I've got a client right now going to have a very large liquidity event. I don't think I need a financial advisor. What are they going to do? And that's the point. It's the same pushback some people get with attorneys. They know how to do it themselves. They know how to do it better. But anyway,
our industry is as guilty as yours, right?
Yeah.
And we have a similar reputation, right? It's like I don't need those guys. They're not. I can do this. I don't want to get screwed over, right?
Yeah.
They don't really recognize simply because of the stereotypes of what you see surrounding us, and that's part of what we're trying to do here. And one of the reasons we're bringing experts and people that work with entrepreneurs into the mix. So not only are we learning from entrepreneurs and our peers, but we're also getting some of these lessons and stories.
Absolutely.
Those are some pretty good stories in terms of what you're working on now. I mean, is there like a big win that you want to spotlight, and maybe like also one of those, why the hell did they not listen to me moments?
Yeah, a big win. I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of them, but one that always resonates with me, and I call him a good friend at this point. But he was a true entrepreneur. The definition of an entrepreneur. Started a business in his garage. And he had, as you've seen in your business dealing with entrepreneurs, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are either the visionaries or the operators. It has not been my experience where you have that one person that can be both the visionary and the operator. In this context, this gentleman wears both those hats. So the situation was, he was early stage, had a good product, and he took on some money from a friend, as you would discuss before, and they didn't have good paper, if any. And he got to the point where he's saying, why is my partner taking out all this money just as much as me, but he's not doing anything? So we're both owners wearing the owner hat, but I'm actually doing everything too. Yeah. So I was able to ground the client. The client at first was reactionary and maybe we'll just give this person more, or we'll move on with this situation. And I said, no, you're doing it all. You're doing it all. What's to stop you? Let's just dissolve the thing and you go across the street. And I remember having a very frank discussion with the partner, the ex-partner now, attorney. And I was very frank. And I said, we can give you something fair now to be done and to buy you out, or your client is not going to get anything. And that resonated. And we were able to negotiate a buyout of that partner. And then years later, that client completed a minority recap with a large public company, got some millions and millions in the door, took some chips off the table, was able to use some of that money to get into other related ventures, which brought more money, more success. And then ultimately, the original public buyer partner that came in, well, one of the cautionary tales here is there's a lot of buyers that come in and tell you this is what we're going to do and we're going to have your back, and it ultimately doesn't turn out that way. And with this particular client, we were able to negotiate to get that public company bought out. And then our client ended up owning the whole thing at a value that was like 10, 20, 30 times the original value. So
amazing.
Just a phenomenal success story, dealing with lots of different personalities, lots of different egos, and being able to be in my client's corner, to just keep them grounded. And now, that client's been around for a decade, and it's just a great relationship.
That's absolutely amazing. Those are the stories that we all love to hear, we aspire to. But there's the other ones.
So the other one, I'm not going to give a specific, but the lesson for the entrepreneurs that are listening to this and viewing this: don't spend your purchase price that's set forth in the LOI until you close your deal. Mm-hmm. So years and years and years ago, it was one of their first transactions, frankly, that I worked on. And it was good that it was so early on that I learned this lesson and saw it firsthand. That it was family business, and they got it. The LOI came in, and it looked like it was going to be good terms, not a big deal, sub $5 million deal, but this was 15, 18 years ago. So, I mean, good, right? And the shareholders went out and sold their homes here and bought homes out of state and bought toys and spent money. And this was just with an LOI. And then all of a sudden diligence is going forward. And it was a conglomerate of buyers, and 2 of the 3 buyers pulled out. And then all of a sudden the cash at close wasn't the cash at close. It was 20% of the cash at close. And we say that, and my partner, Rob, it was his client. I'm working on the deal. And we say to the client, you can't do this deal. You're getting 20% down, and you're going to take a note for 80%. Doesn't make any sense. Well, they had spent the money, and they ended up taking back the business. So fortunately, we did a good job securitizing the note, but they ended up selling the business, selling the business, buyer defaults, foreclosing back on the business, and taking it over and moving back. So that's the one where it's, you should have listened.
That is a great lesson. I mean, and that it's so naturally intuitive, right? For a business owner not to be thinking about those consequences, right? It's like, hey, they're going to give me this money and life is good and off we go. And we've waited for this day and we're not going to wait another, right? And I mean, that's a really valuable lesson.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask you about was, why someone should work with you. And I think we talked a little bit about why someone should work with you in particular, but I'm going to switch that question up just a little bit.
Sure.
Because the one thing that I can tell you, and it's true for me in running my own business, in many aspects, I don't know, right, who I can trust, who I can hire. Everybody in the space has the same pedigree and the same bio, and the same intent in terms of what they're going to do. I mean, are there any things that stand out to you or glare to you in terms of like little tells that people should be, maybe aware of or looking at or thinking about exploring further before engaging with their brother-in-law or their neighbor across the street?
Look, I'm a straight shooter. I'm kind. I'm excellent at my craft. One thing that I really think differentiates me from other practitioners is I give a shit. And I tell people that when they are interviewing me, I say, I'm not here to do this one little thing for you. I mean, obviously, if someone gets referred over for a deal, it's more often than not that one transaction. But frankly, what I tell people is, I'm going to be your lawyer, but we're going to be friends. And I can't tell you the number of people that I can look to that I've represented over the years that I'm proud to call friends. And it's about the relationship for me. And it's about helping that entrepreneur protect what they've built and succeed. And being part of it is a lot of fun. So that's, it's I care and we have fun along the way is it. I'm not a bulldog. I'm a straight shooter. I'm sincere. I give in on the points that really don't matter. I dig in on the points that do. I think that's people will get the genuineness, and if they don't, I'm not the right fit. And you know what? There's someone else out there that's going to be the right fit. And it's Rich. It's the same thing with your business.
Well, it's the same thing with any professional service business, right? And I mean, I think what you're describing too really fits into one of the things I've always talked about. It's like we have to assume as consumers that the people that we're talking to, interviewing, trying to figure out that are competent, right, in their craft. Right, that's just table stakes. And I think so often exactly what you were just talking about really closely ties into the concept of making sure that you actually like the person, right, that you're going to be working with. Because the stuff that you're doing and the stuff that that person is going to be doing with you as you do it, you're going to be closer than you think. And working with someone you don't like, trust, or respect, that gets real tough. And it happens a lot, right? We think we want the bulldog, or we think we want the straight shooter, or we think we want but then they wind up maybe being those things, but somebody that we just can't tolerate being in the same room with, right? And the professionals that are guiding this audience are doing for this audience, it really does matter. The relationship does matter.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you one more question before I start to kind of, wrap up into the closing questions. But your clients, just like mine, are 9 times out of 10, right? High A-type personalities, the person that knows everything, because we're forced to know everything, even though we don't. It's a weakness for us to admit that we don't. And so how have you personally managed working with those kinds of personalities?
So the first thing I do with new clients is setting expectations. So something that's unique about our firm is we're all ex big law firm attorneys. We are not the low cost option, and we're also not Kirkland and Ellis or fill in the blank large law firm. So I set expectations about cost, service, and most importantly, balance. And what I tell people is if there's something that's truly important and a true deadline, I will jump for you and we'll get it done. But if you're the client who cries wolf over and over and over about needing something and needing something and needing something, and it turns out you don't need it, then I know you're used to your staff perhaps operating that way, but that's not how we operate. We're going to focus on what's important when it's important and give you good service. So but we've been successful in that regard. And that doesn't mean I get every client, because some clients want the person that they can call at 9:00 at night on a Wednesday and say, what do you mean you're home with your family? I need you here drafting this agreement and I didn't tell you about it. So that's just who I am, transparent wise. The other thing that I find with some of the more early stage A personalities is they want to control everything. It's about control, and they want to make sure that everything is lined up and that they can control everything. And one of the things that maybe I'm not a good businessman, but it's when people come to me and they're early stage revenue, or they're not doing great at some point, and they say, we want to have all these agreements in place, or I need to give away so much of the company in order to move along. And it's no, time out. Let's look at your cap table. Let's make sure we keep the equity with you. Let's not give things away. And so, I mean, to simplify the answer, it's focusing on what's important when it's important, protecting the client from themselves sometimes, and setting expectations. I'm not going to have every client in the world. I don't need every client in the world. I believe in abundance. There's going to be people that are going to be great for me, and I've been fortunate. And there's going to be people that are going to want that big firm lawyer that's the whipping boy, that they can treat that way. So again, I think it's that relationship.
I'm going to key in on that statement you just made, and I'm going to share this as another lesson, right, that we can learn from this podcast. You said that you are someone that views the world from the lens of abundance. And I will tell you that, as an entrepreneur, that mindset is going to be the one that is going to take you places. There are those that see the world through scarcity, and those are the people that are constantly protecting, never moving forward, freezing. But it's really, those are the only two ways that you can see the world, right? Either through the lens of abundance or scarcity. And if you do nothing else or learn nothing else other than all the great reasons why we want to work with Kev, focus in on that, right? That mindset that you talked about, and seeing the world from the lens of abundance is going to be one of those single most critical things that you can do to driving the type of success that we all want to have, those of us that are listening to this. Kevin, your stories were really cool. I mean, many of them certainly would highlight moments that I would say you could be very proud of. Do you have a specific moment that you wanted to point to that maybe is different than those, that you would consider to be, your proudest moment so far along your path in your career?
I would say that a real more recent proud moment was thanks to you, Rich. You referred over a colleague, friend of yours. And I went through a beauty contest. This was a person who was going to be selling their business. And I went through a beauty contest against 8 other very well-respected M&A attorneys in Los Angeles, Century City, all at very large law firms for the most part. And I came out the winner. So that was really a success story because the conversations that I had with that particular client were consistent with what you and I just shared. And it turned out that that client and I see the world through the same lens and a very respectful relationship of confidence and admiration for each other. And that's been a really good success story. So thank you.
This goes back to everything we've talked about to this point, right? It's like, I made that introduction and guided that individual your way simply because of what you just said, right? It's like I knew that there would be a connection from a values perspective, right? And that goes back to what I was just saying earlier. It's like there's nothing more important than being able to have shared values with the professionals that you're working with. Because when those value sets start to diverge, that's when you start to have problems with the professional relationships that you're working in. And my follow-up question to that is, who's the biggest contributor of getting you there? That'd be very narcissistic of me to ask that question, given how you teed it up. So unless it's something other than me, I would just ask you not to answer that question. But if there's something else in there that contributed to your ability to have success other than that, what would you say that it was?
I would say two people that really stood out. My partner, Rob, he's 10 years my senior. He's a dear friend, excellent attorney. He's who taught me. And it was really about focusing on becoming an exceptional attorney, challenging yourself, making yourself learn, not knocking on his door as soon as a question arose in my head. It was really digging in and trying to figure out what the answer was and what the solution was. So he's definitely been a big mentor. And then I would also say, on the flip side, my dad. My father had a family manufacturing business. I saw the ups and downs of how hard that was. And what he always said to me is, every job's a sales job. And I know that sounds corny, but the reality is you can be the best at whatever you are. You could be the smartest money manager, financial advisor in the world. You could be the best attorney in the world. But if you don't have the relationships and you're not able to instill confidence in people and generate and have clients, then, you're not going to be free, and you're not going to have the freedom to kind of navigate the way you want to go. So
2 amazing mentor stories and great advice takeaways there. Anything that you do day to day as a ritual that you find to be important as, in terms of making Kevin who Kevin is?
Prayer, exercise, I'd say balance, having fun, letting my family know that I love them, but it's balance. It's working hard, working smart, and making sure that you can end the day with a smile on your face because you had some fun and you did some stuff that you enjoy doing. A lot of what I do professionally, I enjoy. I get to talk to Rich Schutte. I get to talk to good clients. I get to talk to good colleagues. It's fun. But then I also get to leave and go surf, go golf, go mountain bike like we did. It's finding the time to be part of not only my life and my colleagues' life, but my family's life.
I'm going to ask one last question and wrap this up. We've gone a little bit longer than I thought we would, but this has been super interesting. But before I ask the last question, I want you to be able to let people know where they might be able to find you. If it's via LinkedIn, a website, or a phone, or whatever you want to do, please share that now, because this is somebody, folks, who you're going to want to definitely have in your Rolodex.
I appreciate that, Rich. Our website is www.npw multimillion-dollar.law.com. And our phone number at the firm is 818-879-9700.
And don't miss your opportunity to get Kevin on your team. He's a hell of a guy, and a great interview. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
My last question as we wrap this thing is, at the end of the day, right, when all is said and done, whether you're retiring or about to draw your last breath, right?
Yeah.
What is one thing that you want to be remembered for?
I think it would be that I brought joy, comfort, and happiness to myself, my family, my friends, and my colleagues. So that I was that bright beacon for people to be drawn to.
You've definitely been one for me, as we've shared a professional relationship, and I know you have for my clients as well. So I think you're well on your way.
Thank you, Rich.
Make sure you find Kevin. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you found some lessons that were valuable to you during this episode. And make sure that you tune in next week. You can find us on all of your regular podcast channels, be it Spotify, Apple, or otherwise. And we're on the YouTube channel as well. So find us, like us, and follow us. Looking forward to seeing you next time on The Road Already Traveled. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you.
As always, thanks for joining us on the Road Already Traveled podcast. We're grateful you've joined our community and look forward to seeing you again for our next installment, so be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss a thing. This communication is for informational purposes only and does not purport to be a complete statement of all material facts related to any company, industry, or security mentioned. This material is limited to the dissemination of general information pertaining to its diversified services. The opinions expressed reflect our judgment now and are subject to change without notice and may or may not be updated. The information provided, while not guaranteed as to accuracy or completeness, has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable. Financial planning, advisory, and/or consulting services offered through Avalon LLC, a registered investment advisor. Prospects or clients who take advantage of any free consultations or services are under no obligation to hire Avalon LLC as their investment advisor. Listeners who are not market professionals or institutional clients of Avalon LLC should seek the advice of their financial advisor before making any investment decisions based on this communication. Additional information on any securities mentioned is available on request.